And welcome back to America Talks Live. I'm Bill Tucker, filling in for Steve today. Rejoining us as part of our first political panel, he's the Navy SEAL and former FBI agent Jonathan Gilliam. He's also host of The Experts, which you can watch every weeknight at 9 p.m. via his Facebook page, with his Jonathan T. Gilliam. And we are pleased now to welcome in Barrett Holmes Pitner. He's a columnist at the Daily Beast and at The Guardian. Barrett, always good to see you. When we went into break, we were talking about the transition of the Trump team. It seems to be moving fairly smoothly for the most part, or at least as well as you can expect a few days into trying to get this ball rolling. However, there is one name that comes up, and it seems to be extremely controversial, especially for people who were opposed to Trump, those on the left, and that is Steve Bannon. So let me put the question to you. I don't know what your feelings are about Steve. You may not care, but what are your feelings about Steve? And what is the basis of this really strong opposition to Bannon being an advisor to Trump in the White House?
Well, thanks for having me. And the issue with Steve is Breitbart's content is so far to the right that it makes a lot of Americans hesitate and wonder if Trump's advisors and counselors will actually encompass and bridge a divide, or will they cater more to alt-right leaning sensibilities, which may encourage really far right white supremacists, all sorts of sinister things that we don't want to be the image of our country as a nation. He's spoken a lot about trying to bridge a divide, and Steve seems to be a person who will not help bridge that divide, but maybe exacerbate it, and that's quite concerning for a lot of Americans, especially the ones who didn't vote for Trump.
There is an enormous amount of passion, but Jonathan, I turn to you. He's a former Navy officer, former investment banker. He owns a piece of a television show in syndications. He's a smart guy, but Barrett raises a point. There are a lot of people who are concerned about him because they see him as somehow the extreme of the alt-right.
Sure.
I don't know whether you've had any experience with Bannon or not.
I absolutely know Bannon. I've met him several times. I've interviewed him. He's interviewed me on Sirius. And he's a great guy. He's an intense individual. There's no doubt about that. You ask anybody a word to describe Steve Bannon, it's going to be intense. But the thing is, what he represents, and I think Trump did an excellent job with this, is he represents a great vast majority of the people that elected Trump to office. On the other hand, you have Reince Priebus, who's going to handle the establishment. And I just think this was a great way to kind of break up the necessity to make sure you don't forget the people that elected you to office, which often happens.
Well, that would be good, but to Barrett's point, is this guy a racist? Is he somebody that people should be concerned about?
He's not a racist. Steve Bannon, again, like I said, is an intense guy. He ran Breitbart, which has a lot of clickbait on it, but he is extremely bright and well thought out, and is an extreme conservative. I don't like these terms alt-right, alt-left, evangelical. He's a conservative, and he speaks to the people that elected Trump, and I think that's a great position to have him in.
Yeah, never in my life did I think I'd grow up to talk about clickbait on TV, but what the heck. What about that, Barrett, before we move on to another topic? It does seem like a fair argument. He does have Reince Priebus there, who represents the traditional, in my mind anyway. Bannon sort of represents the drain the swamp crowd, who are just fed up with business as usual in Washington, D.C. And in the end, does it really even matter whether we object or not? It's his right to keep him, right?
Well, yeah, the president has the right to appoint whoever he wants to as his cabinet. I'd say for the Priebus issue, Priebus, he represents the mainstream Republican, and clearly Bannon represents the alternative to it. I think for non-Republican Americans, we've heard Trump over the last week or so, and people have emphasized a need for unity, bridging a divide, and Bannon, whether he is or isn't a racist, the idea that his publication where he worked kind of catered to these fringe sensibilities and emboldened people who may or may not be racist leaves a lot of Americans quite concerned about what will be the message that's sent to the nation about where our values really lie, and not the individual values, but what we promote to a lot of different individuals. And Bannon kind of raises a lot of questions for that.
I just want to say one thing, though. I'm not a journalist, and one thing that bothers me tremendously about journalism now, we could do a whole show on what I feel about journalism, is that they throw out words like racist. I mean, unless you know somebody's a racist, you're really maligning their character. Regardless if he was an editor of a paper where they said some things that were a little racy. That you cannot accuse somebody of being a racist and consider yourself a journalist unless you have the facts. And that we have gone down a road in journalism that is extremely dangerous and unethical in my position.
Barrett, I heard that heavy sigh.
Yeah, so let me interject. Yeah, let me interject real quick. I've never met Steve Bannon. I can't tell you what his sensibilities are pertaining to anybody of any race, and I didn't say that I know that. But I did say that
well, you threw out racist about 4 or 5
certain
times.
ways of relate. Yeah, I said that when you have messages that cater to people out there that may be racist, then that is a problem. I did not say that he was or was not a racist, but there are messages that you can do that can embolden people who are racist, and that is quite dangerous. Whether the person sending that message is or isn't a racist is something we should be quite concerned about.
Well, to that point, I want to go to something that President Obama said yesterday. During the campaign, which was nasty, by everybody's admission, it was a nasty campaign, and frankly, it got more disgusting and vile than I personally would have liked to have seen it go. But yesterday, Trump came out and he spoke, and he addressed this issue of the radical, crazy candidate Trump versus what he has experienced in his meetings with him. It's soundbite number 9, guys. If you could play what Obama's thoughts were regarding Trump.
I don't think he is ideological. I think ultimately he's pragmatic in that way. And that can serve him well, as long as he's got good people around him and he has a clear sense of direction. Do I have concerns? Absolutely. Of course I've got concerns. He and I differ on a whole bunch of issues.
And I think it's a really fair statement. I don't expect President Obama to agree with him entirely or even a little bit. So I think it's an honest assessment of the guy. Barrett, can we give the pragmatic Trump a chance? Do you think he's going to get a chance? And I ask that in the context of the protests and the violence that's been going on for the last several days. Do you think we're going to reach a point where that dies down and we maybe take a look at this pragmatist Trump?
Well, the pragmatist Trump that Obama is talking about is the pragmatist Trump that America needs to see. And when we see more of that, I expect things to die down. But it's very much so a wait and see. He's getting the chance right now to pick his cabinet and show us what he will be as president, and we are here to observe it and make our own judgments. But giving a chance isn't giving someone a pass, and hopefully more of us get to see this pragmatic Trump that Obama got to see. But thus far, a lot of us haven't seen it, and that's quite frustrating for many Americans.
Well, no, and I'll just interject this as a journalist. I don't think we should be giving anybody any passes anytime. And my problem with journalism, and we all three could talk about this for a good hour or so, is that we haven't, in fact, created a distance between the press and our politicians in quite some time, and that's always been an edge that upsets me. But Jonathan, this idea of pragmatist, we saw a little bit of that in the interview on 60 Minutes.
Sure.
When he was asked about the immigration issue, I thought he gave a good answer in the sense of, don't panic.
I think one of the things, again, this is another term, pragmatist. I think Trump, if you look at his record, is somebody who thinks effectively when it comes to building a building, for instance, or branding his name. And I think that's the way he looks at things. Is this effective? Right. Will this work? Is this person the right person for this so it can be effective? That's a little bit different than what President Obama described, because that is an ideology. I look at myself the same way. I don't go into doing something if I don't think I'm going to succeed at it. And I think Trump has shown that that is his ideology.
Yeah. Well, I'll accept that. But I think the word pragmatist in this case was being used as, let's get things done. Let's move forward. Let's get together with Congress and sit down and work these things out so that we can move ahead. Barrett, I hesitate to ask this question because it's not really something any of us have any control over. But can we look forward to some spirit of bipartisanship? Because there are certainly parts of Trump that are more Democratic than could be fairly described as Republican. Do you think we're going to see a little more bipartisanship this time around?
Well, you started this segment off by talking about how divisive this campaign has been, and it's been really divisive for well over a year. So there's going to be a lot of work that's going to need to be done to bridge this really severe divide that we've made over the last year and a half. I don't think a week and hearing about Trump being pragmatic is going to start solving or fixing this division, and people will stop being upset. I think it'll be something that we were discussing well past January 20th. There's a lot of work to do to bridge this divide. And to go to the first point, Steve Bannon has exacerbated some people's concerns.
Yeah.
And we were just going to have to keep on talking and seeing a bit more of this
You
pragmatic,
and I will keep on
know,
talking. I got to interrupt
Trump.
you, Barrett, because I got to get us to a break. Jonathan's going to be leaving us now. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. Remember the experts, 9 p.m. on Facebook Live. Barrett, be back. Stacey Washington will be in and join us next when we talk more about President-elect's possible cabinet.